It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through. That I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
First you both go out your way and the vibe is feeling stronger. What's small turn to a friendship turn to a bond, and that bond will never be broken, the love will never get lost. And when brotherhood come first, then the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn, and that line is what we reach, so remember me when I'm gone. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
Don't let the light guide your way.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Amelia Domenko, and I'm President and CEO of the Women's Business Development Center. It is an honor and a joy for me to be here with you today. On behalf of our board of directors and my colleagues at the WBDC, I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. This event, called WBDC Squared, Connect and Celebrate. It's our second year that we're doing Connect and Celebrate, so my clever colleagues came up with Squared. Do we remember that from our algebra classes? I'd also like to welcome a very special person here today, one of our founders, Hetty Ratner. And the co-founder, Carol Dougal, couldn't be here today, but she sends her love and her best to all of you. And we do miss her, but she's doing well and enjoying retirement. Also today, we have some special people other special people I'd like to bring to your attention. We have Candace Waterman. Candace, Vice President and Chief of Staff for the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. I don't know what we'd do without you, Candace. I don't know what we'd do. And we have some honorable guests here today. We have the Honorable State Representative Linda Chapalavia, who is one of our award winners. We have from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, Mariana Spiropoulos. She is president of the Board of Commissioners. Along with her is Barbara McGowan, vice president of the Board of Commissioners, and Kari Steele, who is a commissioner on the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. I also want to welcome, thank you for applauding. I'd also like to welcome our terrific line of speakers and presenters. They're volunteers, they've taken time out of their busy schedules. I know all of you will enjoy hearing from them throughout the day. We're thrilled to have all of you here today. And I want you to know that we have more than 18 states represented here today, and the country of Canada. That geographic diversity is one of the things that makes us strong. And it's a great reminder of how interconnected we are as a country. And these days, we need to be reminded of that. Before I start my formal comments, I'd like to take a moment, and I know all of you do too, to send our thoughts to all the families and the businesses that are just now starting to rebuild after Hurricane Harvey. And our prayers go out to the people who are experiencing the wrath of Irma right now. I'm happy to see that all of you are here safe with us today. So now for my formal comments. For over 30 years, the WBDC has hosted this conference to connect our clients, sponsors, community resources, and government partners with the relationship building, procurement discussions, and capacity building ideas that are shared throughout the day. While this will be our 31st year, this event continues to grow and evolve. And based on your feedback, this year we have greater focus on effective procurement matching and a higher level of capacity building workshops. Every year, though, I'm struck by the depth and talent of the attendees. While we're going to end our day with an awards celebration, the reality is that everyone here is worthy of being honored. And we're going to start, I'm going to highlight some people and some stories. We're going to start with Christina Hutchinson with Proxfinity, who is here with us today. In the summer of 2015, she worked with Karen Goldner. Her company has gone from a patent and a dream to now sales to Fortune 100 companies, and she has successfully raised private equity funding along the way. And then there's Lisa Scott, who graduated this spring from our Scale Up program in Aurora. Lisa's business is Scott Global Migration Law Group and is at a key point of growth for her practice. And then I saw Melissa Latke with the Standing Partnership in St. Louis, a business that successfully transitioned ownership while maintaining her certification. And of course, all of our corporate partners who are here today and every day, not just supporting the center, the WBDC, but supporting what we stand for, creating economic opportunities for women, minorities, and veterans. Another example I'd like to point out on the corporate partner side is for many years, BP America has actively worked to increase the diversity of their suppliers. Their commitment goes beyond words, and we experience it at the WBDC every day for the help of our clients. They have set a very public and measurable goal of achieving $1 billion in annual spend with certified M&W BEs. Can you imagine $1 billion? Now that's what I call a commitment. Of course, I can go on, and for those of you that know me, you know I have the gift of gab. But there are a lot of wonderful success stories that I hope one-on-one I can share with you throughout the day. But I want you to look at your tables. You have a three-sided thing sitting on the table, and there's cards like this on it. So it's in the middle of your table. These are stories that highlight a few of our clients in more detail. While the WBDC works with both, as you know, we work with both startup and emerging businesses, as well as many of the established businesses that are here today. And I just want to highlight the fact that 60% of our clients are headquartered, do business in low to moderate income communities. And they're seeking entrepreneurship as a path to economic self-sufficiency. The WBDC provides our programs and services mostly at no cost to our clients. 85% of our clients are women. Yes, 15% are men, and depending on the program, it gets higher. And our staff works, I assure you, our staff works tirelessly to help them achieve the dreams of owning their business. With that in mind, I want to ask for your continued support today. We have partnered with UBAC, which is an online giving app that a woman-owned business founded to facilitate online donations at our event today. We encourage you to make a donation. It doesn't make any difference how big or small it is, but it's going to help us continue to assist our clients to achieve success, create jobs, fuel economic growth, and of course, it builds strong communities, and we all benefit when we're living in a strong community. As the business landscape continues to evolve, the WBDC supports business leaders and business owners like those in this room today as they adapt new ideas that push limits no matter what the business venture is. Our mission is to give business owners, especially women and other diverse entrepreneurs, equal opportunity to succeed in a constantly changing and competitive environment. As we work with you to create these opportunities, we want you to know that we strive to be a voice for you in important dialogues throughout our communities. Business is directly impacted by federal, state, and local policies. And I might add, not more than today. The WBDC is constantly working to ensure that business owners, especially women, minorities, the LGBTQ, and veterans, have a voice in the conversations about proposed policy changes. Today, we hope all of you here will access the resources and procurement opportunities that will help you innovate, grow, and take your business practice to the next level. I hope each of you will take advantage of every element of today's event, whether it's networking with your fellow business leaders or pitching your products and services. This event is filled with opportunity for you to garner. We are all here to learn and to grow with each other. So I challenge each of you to build one new relationship with a business leader, a business owner, or a community partner today. And I am going to ask you later if you did that. I'm taking names. This work we do, including the opportunities that are going to be present at today's event, would not be possible without the support of our generous sponsors and partners. We are honored to have many of them here with us today. Thank you for all your support, and I especially want to thank our platinum sponsors, BP America, BMO Harris Bank, Deluxe, US Bank, and Wintrust. We are incredibly grateful to all of you also, the business leaders in the room, the procurement representatives, the workshop panelists who are generously donating their time to make today's event a success. Most importantly, I want to thank every business owner that is with us today. You make our work matter. You are the reason we continue to accelerate business development and growth for women and all diverse business owners. We know that supporting you is the best way to help our communities and support our local economies. Thank you for joining us today and for inspiring us every day. Now, I would like to invite Deborah Jennings-Johnson to the stage. Deborah is Senior Director of Supplier Diversity for BP America and serves as Chair of the WBDC Board of Directors, my boss, and Vice Chair of the Women's Business Enterprise National Council Board. Deborah has been a passionate advocate for minority and women business owners for over 20 years. She started at a young age, you know, I have to say that, even though we're the same age. During her tenure in supplier diversity at BP, the inclusion of minority and women-owned businesses increased threefold. And now, with a committed goal of reaching $1 billion, I know that Deborah is going to get BP there. She is a leader in supplier diversity. She has received numerous awards and recognition from organizations such as the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council, and its CEO is right over here, Sheila Hill Morgan. the Chicago United, the Minority Business Development Agency, SCORE, WeBank, and of course, the WBDC. Deborah is a critical member of our board, and I am incredibly grateful for her counsel and expertise, which I need, as we continue to advocate for female, minority, and veteran business owners. Please join me in giving a warm, warm welcome to Deborah Jennings-Johnson.
Well, good afternoon. I am so happy to see all of you. The room, it looks fabulous. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the Board of Directors of WBDC, I thank you for taking the time out today to enjoy the great program that we have prepared for you and the networking. I was saying to our guest speaker today, she was asking me a little bit about the history, and I said the thing that I like most about the organization is that there are relationships that go beyond just the business. It's woman business owner to woman business owners and corporations to corporations, and you could feel it in the room as you guys were preparing for your lunch. So thank you for being here. This is an event that I always like to participate in, because where else can you find dedicated, successful business people that are gathering for investing in the community and with each other, taking time out to make sure our country, if you will, is doing what it should do to make the economic engines run properly. WBDC Square, Connect and Celebrate, is a time that for all of us to hone our skills, to take advantage of the resources, to listen to the success stories, to do your benchmarking with each other, so that we all leave here with something that we can use to make ourselves better. WBDC is honored to serve business owners like those that are here today throughout the year. We foster diversity that works for the independence of women business enterprises who are certified. We facilitate procurement with our corporations, and we have resources that help capacity building with women business owners. It is important to recognize that the work that the WBDC does goes beyond the direct support to women business owners. The organization is also a key partner in companies like my own, BP America, that values and actively seeks to engage more diverse suppliers in its supply base. We choose to invest in organizations like the WBDC and WeBank. Why? Because it helps us meet our mission. Many of the over 200 suppliers that we have, minority and women-owned suppliers that we have, those women suppliers come out of the WBDC and WeBank. We do that because we know that a strong community directly connects to having a strong economy, and that businesses whose ownership reflect our customers, our employees, and our neighbors make a company like ours great, as well as the businesses that we support. We have spent about $5 billion with minority and women-owned companies since 2008. And as you heard earlier, we have a great goal of $1 billion annually. So we're aiming for that $1 billion roundtable. And I can tell you that one of the ways that we're starting to do that is making sure we're building capacity with some of those companies that are currently in our supply chain, and being very targeted as to where we look for other companies. So we're going to enjoy participating in the matchmaker to meet some other companies that can help us reach our goal. The WBDC recognizes that actively connecting large businesses with growing businesses is a mutually beneficial opportunity. And speaking of connections, the next two guests will bring great connections and insights from both sides of the aisle. It is my honor to introduce you to Amanda Brinkman, a member of the WBDC Board of Directors, the Chief Brand Communications Officer for Deluxe, which is headquartered outside of Minneapolis. In less than 4 years, Leading the brand team of Deluxe, Amanda has transformed a 100-year-old brand, and we all know that brand on our checks, into a fresh, well-known name. Amanda is a champion for small businesses, and is creator and producer, and this is something new, I didn't know this, a producer and co-host of an acclaimed Small Business Revolution mainstream that is a series on Hulu, and also smallbusinessrevolution.com. So we should all write that down and make sure that we're looking at that again. I'm going to say it's Small Business Revolution Main Street, and it's on Hulu, and then also smallbusinessrevolution.org. So please make sure that you tune in to look at that. Please join me right now in welcoming Amanda.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much for having me here today. It is going to be my distinct honor to introduce the woman that I will be interviewing. She is very impressive. She has started her own business. She has exited and sold her own business. She's worked in corporate, and she now invests in companies. And so I think we have a lot to learn from her and all of the different walks of her career. So we're looking forward to digging into that. So Sonia is the vice president with Pritzker, am I pronouncing that correctly? Group Venture Capital. She's responsible for sourcing, diligence, and oversight in the firm's investment in consumer, enterprise, and emerging technologies. She currently serves on the boards of Curiosity.com and Sister City. And most recently, Sonia was vice president of product and head of mobile apps for Retail Me Not, responsible for cross-platform strategy and leading app redesign that earned a 2015 People's Voice Webby Award for the best shopping app. Nice. She joined Retail Me Not following its acquisition of Picky, which was the venture-based mobile shopping startup that she co-founded in 2011. So please join me in welcoming Sonia to the stage, and we're going to learn from her and her experience. All right, so we spent some time together this morning over breakfast, and we realized we have very many things in common. We both have a daughter, and just one of them. We're both very driven and talked a lot about really trying to figure out that balance of it. We also talked a little bit about how do you explain to your parents what you do. And you said that it really helps to explain to people that as a venture capitalist now, what you do is very much like the show Shark Tank, which is something that many people can relate to, right?
This is true.
This is true. So how many people in the room watch Shark Tank or have seen an episode of Shark Tank? Awesome. So Deborah mentioned that I produce and co-host a show called Small Business Revolution Main Street. And the co-host of the show is actually Robert Herjavec. So he is my co-star, and he is the shark that sits at the end. And what we do is we go into small towns and revitalize them through their small business core, or their small business community. So we work with a handful of small businesses that we feel are core to the town and revitalize them. So it's kind of a documentary reality makeover show. It's very inspirational as well as educational. So if you're a business owner in the room, we recommend you watch it because you'll get some tips. And if you're just a small business supporter, we definitely recommend it because it's just entertaining. But this is another thing that we have in common is that I work with someone on Shark Tank, and you are essentially a shark as a venture capitalist.
That's true.
There you go. So talk a little bit about when you actually get to the point of seeking out venture capital investment. That's kind of further down the road, right? But Shark Tank has really opened people's eyes to this concept of funding in that capacity. But there's other options for funding your business along the way, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things we talked about earlier is that there are multiple options for funding, and depending on the stage of your business and what you're looking for, different solutions might be the right solution for you. So we have a number of great banks in the room, corporate sponsors, partners that can help out on the debt side. Where venture capital plays is more on the equity side, where instead of taking a loan, we're putting in money in exchange for equity or percent ownership in your business. And as far as equity financing goes, there are different people who are the right people to reach out to at different stages of your company. So when you're just getting started, often you'll hear people going to friends and family or doing Kickstarter campaigns. That I kind of put in the friends and family bucket of getting initial funding. When you're maybe a little bit further along and it's not just an idea, and maybe you have some prototypes and proof of concept and maybe even some initial customer contracts and revenue, you might go out to angel investors who are high net worth individuals. And then beyond that, one step further, you have seed funds, which are smaller funds whose initial check sizes might be somewhere between $50K and $250K, or maybe $50K and $500K. And then the next step is once you have more significant revenue and traction and you're looking to accelerate your business, so you have something you've proven that can work and you want to step on the gas, is when you would come pitch a venture capital fund for funding.
What are some of the things that when you're looking at different funding options, and even if you get to the VC stage, what are some of the things that business owners should be thinking about when they are kind of considering different investors?
Yeah, so one of the pieces of advice that I give, and this is something that in the venture community, there's this blog post that's become lore, and it's called Lines and Not Dots. And the idea is when you're pitching somebody for an investment, every interaction you have is a dot. And so if you come in once and you pitch somebody and you ask them for money, they have one data point to base their decision off of, and your likelihood of having a successful conversation is probably limited. But if you build a relationship with somebody and you can create multiple dots where you maybe meet with them once, get advice, share ideas, tell them what you're going to do, and then go do it and come back and tell them that you did it. Have another conversation that creates another dot, and another conversation and create another dot. One of my favorite investments is a company that I think has pitched our fund 4 or 5 times, and we've said no. And then finally they got to me the 5th time. They pitched me, and I said yes. And it's a company here in Chicago called Interior Define. They do built-to-order custom furniture, but I think they did a really good job of creating a line. And while, at different stages they were too early, or maybe they hadn't figured everything quite out yet, but they got to a point where they didn't take no for an answer. They were very persistent, and they created a line and built a relationship. So it's very much a people-driven business where, especially for investors who see hundreds of pitches a month, to really differentiate yourself, you want to make sure that you build a relationship. And it's a mutual matching process. I tell founders that taking money from somebody is like a marriage with no divorce, because you can't just get rid of somebody. You're stuck with them, you're married to them. And so you want to be really careful about whose money you take, and do the research, talk to other people they've invested in, and make sure that there's a mutual match and that they're bringing more than just money to the table. A lot of people can bring money to the table, but what else can they do to add value for your business? Will they give you mentoring and coaching and support? Can they help introduce you to your next 5 customers? All of those things are important.
Well, I think that last point is especially poignant because it is about not just thinking about the money that they're bringing to the table, but the value that they're adding to your business. So when you're investing in companies, you're not just giving them money, right? You're also helping give them guidance. So when a business is seeking out people to be involved in their business financially, how do they know what else they should be bringing to the table? Do you look at your own skill set and say, what am I missing? I think I need someone who could maybe help me more on the marketing side or understands finance a little bit better. How do you round out or complement your skills as a business owner through your financial backers?
Yeah, I think that's exactly a great way to look at it. Is first off, where are your gaps building your business? Is it social media? Is it marketing? Is it operations? Is it finance? And try to find somebody who can help you round that out. The other thing that I think is really important, even as I reflect back on my time as a founder, when I had investors, I had great investors, but I had certain investors who I always had to be selling to and kind of managing the story and, managing, because I didn't want them to get cagey or nervous that things weren't always going right. And in a small business or in a startup, things often are not going right. I mean, you read the article at the end of the day about somebody exiting or somebody, getting this great partnership or this great deal done, but there's so much that happens before that happens. Hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and hard situations, hiring and firing, that doesn't get marketed. So that's my caveat on that. But so one bucket of investors that I felt like I had to kind of always be selling to, and then another set of investors who I really was able to open up the kimono with, and when things were going wrong were my first call. And so when I think about my own investment philosophy and how I try to partner with the founders that I invest in, I tell them, if you're not on a text message basis with your investors, then they may not be the right investors for you, because when you think about the person you want to be taking money from, and if they're adding real value, you shouldn't have to sugarcoat things, or you should be able to text me at 10 o'clock at night and say, you know what, this deal just fell through. I need to figure out how to make payroll. What am I going to do? And I want to be that call. I want to help you think through that, because in early stage companies and startups and small businesses, it's the hard stuff that defines the company, and ultimately it defines whether you're a success.
I think that's great advice, because a lot of people start their own business for many different reasons, but one of them a lot of times is because they want to be their own boss and they want to kind of control their own destiny. And I think sometimes accidentally, by bringing on funders or funding partners, you end up introducing this element of a boss and a structure and a board that can be forcing you into different decisions, or that you feel accountable to, and you're actually removing some of that flexibility that you originally started your business to have.
That's certainly one advantage to debt financing, which there are many partners in the room who can speak to that, is that you don't give up control. So,
how do people know when they should seek any sort of funding solution? Is it just you look at your own capital and you decide, I can't grow fast enough with what I have, I need to kind of add fuel to this fire? Or how do you know when it's time to bring on funding, whether it's VC or debt funded?
Yeah, I think that it's a very personal decision around the type of company you want to build. There's a slow, steady path where you can bootstrap a company, not take any outside funding, retain complete control, and there's some great success stories in Chicago, Context Media, which is now Outcome Health, that did that for 7 years before raising a huge round that we just participated in. But they were able to very much do everything on their own terms, which is so admirable and respectable. So I think it depends. And then if you take on venture capital financing, then you've got people's opinions, people that have an equity stake in the company. You may have to bring on a formal board. And then the expectation from investors is that in venture, we're looking to 10x our money. And so it's not a slow, steady path anymore. We need to see you growing at a certain trajectory. And so it creates a lot of pressure. And then there's things in between. So I think it depends on kind of what you want to do. And as far as friends and family money, you got to be able to sit across from your friends and family at Thanksgiving dinner if you take their money.
Sorry, I lost all your money.
So yeah,
so go over
that's
well.
kind of a pressure there for sure. And so I guess it's when you feel like you have the conviction that you can do the right thing with the money is when you should go out and raise money.
Well, one of the things I think Shark Tank has really, as a platform, opened people's eyes to the option of venture, not just VC, but pursuing that. But they make it look so simple. So I've been on the set. Those pitches are actually like an hour and a half that they edit down into 6 or 7 minutes for the actual show itself. But I think I almost think it does a little bit of a disservice to the process of seeking funding. I think it makes it look a lot easier, right? Like you would never negotiate 50% of your company away for $100,000 like you do on the show, or do it without a lawyer next to you, right?
So the terms are horrible. I was gonna say. Shark Tank, I feel like in some ways it makes it look really easy, and then in other ways it's so, I feel like it breaks my heart when I see people sell 50% of their company for $200,000. I'm like, no, that's not how it should be. So like when I think about typically in venture capital rounds, you expect to give up 20% of your company in any round of funding that you raise. But going back to Shark Tank and some of the discrepancies with the real world. So for my first round of funding with my company, we raised a little over $1 million, and I did 85 pitches to get to that $1 million. That means we had 10 people say yes, roughly, and so 75 no's. And that's the typical funnel in venture capital. Like a lot of people are going to tell you no, especially at the earliest stages back in the day when I was first pitching the company, I had a prototype and a PowerPoint, and it was just me in a room pitching a bunch of males on a shopping app that they would never use. And so, there was a high level of skepticism. So I feel like one of the things, it would be very hard to secure your whole round of funding in just one meeting. You should plan on 85 to get to the one. And then there are a lot of terms that go into even the deals. And we've seen on the flip side, or I have friends who've done the Shark Tank thing, and you would never negotiate without a great lawyer by your side. And even if you're coming to pitch a venture capitalist or any term sheet for financing, you should make sure that you hire a great lawyer. There's a great book called Venture Deals by Brad Feld from Foundry Group, and it's a good overview of the key terms so that you can be educated about what to expect in any term sheet or financing round that you do. But at the same time, I think the first paragraph of the book is, okay, this is all well and good that you're going to now be more educated, but make sure you hire a good lawyer, because realistically, you're going to do one of these every 2 years, and the venture capitalist does, hundreds of these. And so you're never going to catch every small little thing, and those documents are really onerous. And so, yeah.
Well, so you've started your own business. You've sought funding. You now fund new businesses. But at one point, you sold the business. Mm-hmm. So you call it exiting. Mm-hmm. How did you decide it was time for that? You didn't want to seek additional investors and continue to grow it, but it was time to actually exit and sell the business. How does the business owner know, and what process should they go through to decide it's time to do that?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a very personal decision based on the ambitions you have for the company, as well as the market environment. I mean, for us, we were early in the App Store, and we had some things that were going really well for us, and then there were other things that I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and knew that we would be better off in a bigger corporate environment. So for me, the decision was easy. I also felt very strongly about wanting to return capital to my investors, and so for me, that opportunity to do that was an opportunity I couldn't say no to.
So when you sold your business, you then went along with it, right? Mm-hmm. So then you actually worked in corporate. Do you feel like, I think sometimes people feel like if once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, that you can't kind of go back and forth across the line or across the fence. But was there anything you learned from the corporate side that you would have applied to being an entrepreneur, and or that you're applying to the way you think about who you're going to invest in now?
Yeah, so I had a surprise. So I thought that I was going to be there a year and a day and then be out of Retail Me Not, because that was kind of my minimum agreement. I ended up staying almost 2 years, and it was in part because the CEO of Retail Me Not was also a founder and an entrepreneur, a very successful one that IPO'd his company, and he took me under his wing and was an amazing mentor to me and understood what I needed, because he was an entrepreneur, to stay, where he gave me a lot of ownership and control. And so I was able to learn a lot with all the resources of a public company behind me to continue building a team, building technology, and learning really fast. And so I think that one of the things, I still remember a little bit before my 1 year mark, he sat me down and he was like, what do we need to do to get you to stay? And my ask was for an hour a week with him, where we would just talk about entrepreneurship and being a CEO and being a founder. And so there are a ton of lessons that I took from my corporate experience with me now, just based on those conversations. And I think my lesson learned was, it's the people who matter the most in any experience that you take on. It's the people you hire, it's the people who work for you, who work around you, who you work for. And even, when I was given the opportunity to come to Pritzker Group, my number one reference was this CEO of Retail Me Not, who's still, I meet with him once a quarter. I head down to Austin and do my pilgrimage, pay my respects, and soak in his wisdom.
I love it. So in the Small Business Revolution Main Street, we work with a lot of businesses that have started a business because they loved a thing, or they were great at something. They were a great barber or a great baker, or they loved running a restaurant, or being a restaurateur or a chef, but they maybe didn't understand how to market and grow the business. They maybe didn't understand their numbers. They didn't understand how to hire and fire. There are so many aspects of kind of running a business that aren't inherent in, you have to be good at the thing, but you have to be good at running the business as well. When you're looking at companies to invest in, how do you think about that level of passion versus kind of affinity for the business and kind of business acumen? Do you look at those things equally, or does the passion outweigh maybe their ability to know their numbers cold and understand how to grow their business?
Yeah, I think that it all starts with the person, the founder, and their passion for what they're doing, because we get pitched on the same idea by 10 different people, sometimes within the same month. And when we decide to invest, it's because we feel like that founder has a unique advantage, or I call it founder market fit, where they are the best person to solve the problem that they're going after over anybody else, whether it's, they are starting a daycare software company and they ran their own daycare for 10 years and have all this wealth of knowledge and this passion. So that's all good. And then you can mitigate gaps in the things you're not so good at by hiring great people. And so the thing that I look for is, how good are you at building relationships and hiring people? Mm-hmm. And I have a philosophy around building your mafia. So I read an article maybe 15 years back about PayPal and how the early executive team at PayPal, they were bought by eBay, and then they all went on, 10 years later, and they were all doing different things, but they kind of had they called it the PayPal mafia, because they were all doing great things and helping each other and, backing each other's companies. And I thought, wow, I need to go out and build my own mafia. This is a great thing to do. And that was the first takeaway. And the second takeaway was that careers are really long and winding. You never know where you're going to end up. And so when you find great people, figure out how to stay close to them. Mm-hmm. and keep them near you, because maybe you're not so great at finance, but you have a financial advisor who can give you great advice. Or
I think that's one of the great things about entrepreneurs, though. It feels like it's a crowd that wants to help each other and wants to see each other succeed. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a right way to be as a person. You should just be nice to everyone you ever encounter. But you're right, you never know how those relationships are going to come back, and how two people might be having a conversation about you way over here and you don't even know it, and it's going to lead to that next opportunity. And I think it is always about it. So it's events like this. I think everyone in this room should feel great about the fact that you're constantly putting yourself out there. The more you come to these kinds of things, the more you try to build connections, the more you try to soak in information and meet people, the more connections that can be made. Mm-hmm. And I think that's big. So you talked a little bit about kind of the on the corporate side, you learned a lot about kind of the hiring and the firing and how you think about that. So for the business owners in the room who might be starting to grow their employee base, what are some of the things that you think they should keep in mind? I mean, when you have a small team, each person is that much more vital to the chemistry of the entire group. Mm-hmm.
So I already shared the build your mafia, and you're always hiring. As a CEO or a business owner, you're always hiring. So you're kind of, everybody you meet. And I remember when I was a founder, every engineer I would meet, I would kind of stay close to or suss them out or ask them certain questions to figure out if there were people that I wanted to add to my mafia.
Like, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Like
at a cocktail party,
right, exactly.
This is a very unusual,
or like, how would you code?
Small talk,
you've got 5 stops on an elevator and you're trying to hit 3 floors. How do you think about that? So I think you've always got to be hiring, and then hire slow, fire fast. One of the things that we did was put people, and this is common in the tech world, and I don't know if it's common elsewhere, you put people on a trial period for their first couple weeks, and then you make them the formal offer at the end of a 2 to 4 week trial period. But I think that a lot of times in the interview, you can market yourself one way, but until you really see the chemistry and work with people, it's hard to know what they can really do. And then reference check. So it is amazing to me, even now that I work with a number of companies as an investor, a hire won't work out, and we'll be asking the CEO, well, did we vet them? How did you interview them, or what can we learn about the process? And sometimes the learning is, we didn't actually call the references. And I'm like, well, then you can't complain too much if didn't work out, and you might have heard something in one of those calls that was a red flag.
So I met a small business owner not too long ago that actually has this policy. She's in a very specific service business, but if she just meets a great server at a restaurant or someone at a retail store and she thinks that they just have that right personality, mm-hmm. she wants them on the team. That it's more about the personality and that service aspect than like industry vertical knowledge. Do you think that's a good approach, to think through the brand experience of your company as much as the skill set, or is that kind of industry specific as well?
I think it depends on the role. So you could imagine for an engineering role, if I met somebody, there has to be some level of competency.
A
but
great personality won't make up for like not actually knowing engineering.
Not actually doing it.
Yeah.
But,
well, he's fun to be around, but
yeah.
can't add for.
Yeah. That said, I do think culture fit is really important as a screen. One of the things so early in my career, I worked at Amazon, and one of the things that I've taken with me from their interview process is they had something called a bar raiser, and it was somebody who was not in the functional role. So let's say we're interviewing for a marketing position. We might bring in somebody who was an engineer who we'd identified as like really understanding the Amazon culture to sit in on the interview process, and they would only interview for culture fit, and they could basically veto any hire. And it was powerful, and it was for every role. At Retail Me Not, we instituted it, and it was for every role up to the CFO. There was a junior bar raiser sitting in the meeting that got to make the call and, CFO hire for a public company. But I think there's something to be said for understanding what makes your culture unique and making sure that you have a process, starting at your interview process, to make sure that you uphold certain values.
The culture piece is so important because at the beginning, as a business owner, you are that culture. You are the brand experience to all of your customers. But as you start to grow and you start to become larger and larger, you can't be there for every interaction and every single transaction. And so it's about finding people who can represent the brand, not always be you, but represent the brand that you want at all times. And I think that's why when you say hire slow, fire fast, like that's, you got to really think through some of those pieces. So, okay, so when you were running your business, is there anything that you wish you would have known when you first started that you know now about running a business?
Yeah, I was 20-something when I started my company, and I knew nothing, and I was a horrible CEO for the first bit because, and my co-founders will tell you this, because I thought that power was kind of taken, and that I had to do more of a command and control, and I was a woman, and all these things. And thing that I fortunately somewhat quickly came to realize is that when you hire great people, nobody wants to be told what to do and direct you. As a leader, you have to have a service-oriented mentality around how do I help my people be successful every day. And I've taken that with me now in every role that I've had. And I found when I made that switch from trying to be command and control and dictating and making decisions that I expected to cascade through the organization, when I switched to being service-oriented, trusting my people, and starting off with a question in every one-on-one, like, what can I do to help you be more successful? People worked harder, they had better job satisfaction, the overall results for the company were better. So
I think old school leadership used to be that you needed to be the expert on any possible question that could come up in the room, right? That's how you became the boss, is you had all this experience that led to being this knowledge base. And I think new school leadership is more about your job as CEO is to create the vision and the mission, to get people excited, to bring the right people to the table, and then to remove barriers to make those people successful and empower them. Everyone wants to feel like they own their own role and that they're the expert. Yeah. They won't think that if you as the boss don't have all of the answers that you don't know what you're doing, they'll say, great, I get to be good at what I do. And so I think that's great to think of it as you're almost in service to them. You're creating the environment for them to be successful.
Exactly. I think there are still myths or CEOs like Steve Jobs out there that create this specter of what a CEO in tech that's creative should or could look like. But I think that's not the reality for 99.9% of CEOs.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A here in the room. But do you feel like now that you're in the VC space, do you think you'll ever start your own business again alongside investing in other businesses?
Never say never. I think I would do it in a very different way than I did the last time around. I think I would probably do a small business. So right now, I'm definitely very involved with the companies that I invest in. I take board seats, and I have side projects. I think as a former entrepreneur and tech person, it's always easy to hack around on a side project. So never say never. Yeah. But I'm very happy with where I'm at, in case anybody from my fund is out there. Oh. Very happy.
Super happy. She's been saying it all morning to me. Could not be happier. All right, so
Yes.
I think we covered that. Yeah,
We're good.
totally happy.
Check.
Does anybody have any questions for Sonia or myself? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's mics here and here. She's like an angel with the light behind her.
Yep. Can you hear me? All right. Hi, my name is Victoria Rock. I own Victoria Legal and Corporate Services, and we are historians of the spoken word and guardians of the record. My question to you is just now, you mentioned about being a bar raiser. And I'm in the process of reading a book called Multipliers that they talk about when you hire people or when you're a CEO or whatever. Are you being a multiplier to your employees or are you being a diminisher? And so in the hiring process, when you're talking about would you ask a person that you're interviewing about how are you being a bar raiser, or what did you mean by that statement?
So the bar raiser was actually a title of or an assigned role for somebody in the interview process from our team at either Amazon or Retail Me Not or my own company. And so that person as the bar raiser, and I'm actually trying to think back on why they use the term bar raiser, but I think it was just to maintain a bar for all hiring. They would ask questions around to kind of get at people's values, and there was like a set list of things that they would ask. And I think if you Google, now I think this has been put into practice at a number of organizations, so I think if you Google bar raiser culture fit interview questions, you can see a short list of the types of things that you can ask. One of the other pieces of advice that we give our CEOs when they're making key hires is to get comfortable with silence and not trying to fill the gap for a candidate. As I've sat in or done executive, a lot of times if we're hiring a CFO or somebody senior, I'll sit in on the interview loops, and one thing I've noticed is when there are awkward pauses or gaps, rather than being okay with letting the awkwardness sit and wait to hear what the person has to say, sometimes people will lean in.
I think a company too can develop, what you want as your culture, and it can be very specific when you talk about values, like being specific about what it is, and then developing hiring questions around those things that are unique to you. I don't think it's always about the best practice human resources questions. You can ask any questions consistently of all the candidates. If you look at like Zappos culture or Amazon, some of these companies that are known for their great culture, some of the things that show up on their culture list are bizarre and hilarious and so unique to them. And any size business can do that and decide. I think you want diversity of points of view on your team too. That's really healthy. But there are some maybe unique, things that bring everyone together that you want on your team. So, any other questions? Oh, hi.
I have a question. Sonia, you talked about the business owner. We have a lot of women business owners here today, I think close to 400, who, and we have our corporate partners too, but 400 women business owners, most of which are certified. So they're maintaining control of the company is critical. And you said, don't give up control of your company. What provisions, though, are baseline for an investor like yourself if our business owners are looking to raise equity?
Yeah, so the caveat is if you decide to go the equity financing path, there are certain terms, there's a certain amount of control that is going to need to be given up, but there are things around the voting rights, like what is required in order for you to be able to raise additional capital. That's usually a key term that you'll negotiate. There's generally rules around the board that will be put into place. That's something that you want to have a pretty big say in. And it's not typical when in your first round of funding for you to create a board that gives up board control. That's actually something that, if you've raised tens or $20 million of funding, you might expect to give up. But in the early days, you should expect to retain, I would say, over 50% ownership of your company which hopefully, if you have majority voting rights for almost all the key things you would want to control, would still leave you in a position of power.
Good.
Hi, my name is Deanna Parker. I am I'm right here. She can't see me very well.
There's just like a light right, but you're like an angel.
Yeah, the light. I am a program manager for an entrepreneurship training program for veteran women and military spouses called VWise with the Institute for Veteran and Military Families. And it's a free entrepreneurship training program. And I know you mentioned you pitch your business 85 times, right? And so could you kind of give us some good tips? Because we teach our women, a lot about the elevator pitch and pitching your business in 90 seconds. And you meet someone in an airport or, walking through a hallway, and how can you pitch your business? What are some good points you can give us to key things that you might look for, when we're pitching our business?
Great question.
Yeah, so there are a couple of key elements that we're trying to figure out in an initial meeting with an entrepreneur. The first thing we'll start with is the team, and are they the right team and the best team to go out and solve whatever problem they're solving or whatever solution that they're trying to build. The next thing that we'll look at is the overall market size. So how big is the opportunity that they're going after? And so in the first, your second slide, you might be convincing somebody that it's a really big, lucrative space that you're going after. The next thing we're going to try to assess is product market fit. So how have you figured out that, or proven, even if it's just small data points, that the thing that you're building solves the problem that you're trying to go out and solve? And then we spend a lot of time on the fundamental unit economics, is what we call it, of the business. So if things go well, how much money can you make off of each customer? And what does the lifetime value of a customer look like? And then we'll compare that to what your cost of acquisition might look like to figure out, can this be a profitable, sustainable business in the long term? And then we want to see probably a little bit more data around the competitive advantage and the competitive landscape. So if everything goes right, how do you make sure that other people can't copy you, and that you're doing, map out your competitors and show us how you differentiate from other people in the space? I feel like those are the key questions that we look to answer in the initial meeting. And then the second thing I would say is just that when I say 85 people that we pitched to, for the people who said yes, very rarely was it a single meeting and they said yes. Usually your first time connecting with an investor, you're going to make your initial pitch, and you're just trying to convince them in that first meeting that they should be interested in digging in and asking a bunch of follow-up questions. So for our process, we have a first meeting. I'll meet with an entrepreneur. If I think what they're doing is interesting after a 30 or 45-minute conversation, I'll circle back to them with a data request where I'll ask for a lot more data and information on the business. And then I'll probably want to set up 1 to 2 more meetings to go through the responses to my data requests, as well as meet with the broader team. Often you meet just with the CEO in that first meeting, but you might need to meet with the broader team to assess the tech, the ops, the finance, et cetera. So it can take a long time to raise funding. I'd say on average, for smaller checks, like less than $1 million, maybe it takes 4 weeks from an initial meeting to get to a yes. And then for much larger $5 million checks, that's a multi-month process. So to manage expectations, you shouldn't expect, like Shark Tank, you're going to walk in the room, you're going to spend 2 minutes, and you're going to walk out with $100,000. It's a process.
And you want it to be a process as a business owner. You used the analogy earlier that it's a marriage you can't get a divorce from. Mm-hmm. You want to date the venture capitalist, right?
Yeah.
You want to see if that's the right one. I like that you had 10 yeses and you spent your time selecting the right one for you as well. It's not like you should just be so grateful for the money that you take it from whomever. You have to make sure it's the right relationship and do the dating, the courting.
Sonia and Amanda, my name is Al Cheney Marketing Strategies. And my question to you this afternoon is, what is the value and practicality of building a brand, particularly for a small business? How do you go about it? Small towns, how do you go about it? And what are some of the key things to keep in mind about building your brand really on a budget?
Yeah, so this is what we work with businesses on the show on and in real life. Your brand is your most important thing, and it actually has a lot to do with some of the things that you mentioned about how you consider the funding piece of it, and that has to do with your unique differentiators. How are you different from everyone else, and what is uniquely true to you? Narrowing in on that is key. And then it's all about consistency. It's making sure whether it's in your logo, your website, your printed materials, the way you answer the phone, the way your store looks if it's a brick and mortar location, that everything is consistent. Consumers don't give that a lot of conscious thought, but subconsciously that communicates your level of professionalism. So people don't come into your store and say, well, now this feels different than their website. Must have been someone different on their team working on it. That's okay. Like, nobody thinks that, right? They just automatically think that there's something disparate there. So it's about really knowing what your unique differentiators are, being very clear on them and what is unique to you, and being clear about that, and then being really consistent about the brand. And I think what's so great about running a business or starting a business now is that, I mean, you used to have to save up to buy a storefront or to rent a storefront. Now you can prop up a business pretty economically because the internet has leveled the playing field for small businesses. I mean, you can show up big online. At Deluxe, we work with 4.5 million small businesses on exactly that. Building a great website and making sure you're findable online are as important as having a sign out front of your business. And you can do those things with partners like Deluxe, with a friend from college who does marketing. There's ways to do it, but you have to be the minder of your brand and that consistency. But I think you can do it very economically as well.
Yeah, I love this question because as an investor who spends all of my time, most of my time on consumer investments, brand is everything because it creates preference and it creates a competitive advantage. And I actually wrote a blog post on this topic titled, How to Convince a VC You've Built a Winning Brand, and how can you quantify this thing that feels really squishy? And what we were able to do was look at some of our most successful brands in our portfolio. We were investors in Honest Company, Dollar Shave Club, and Casper, which are some better-known consumer brands. And when you look at them in their early days, and when you look at successful consumer companies in their early days, you know that you've created a winning brand when you don't have to pay a lot for acquisition. Because if something is working in consumer, people are going to talk about it. And so you're going to see people show up to buy your product or show up at your door through word of mouth and referrals. And the way we'll quantify that is when we look at early stage consumer investments, we'll ask to see their traffic acquisition mix. And for us, the hurdle is we want to see at least 50% of your traffic or your customers are coming from non-paid channels, whether that's referrals, word of mouth, organic SEO traffic, things that you're not paying for. And so that's one thing we'll look at. The second thing we'll look at is Net Promoter Score, which is there's tons of services now online to help you track this, but it's basically on a score of 0 to 10. You'll poll your customers and ask them how likely they are to refer you to a friend. And the people who are in the top bucket are your promoters, and almost everybody else is kind of net neutral, and then the people who are in the bottom bucket are your detractors. And so we'll look at your Net Promoter Score to figure out how strong is your brand, how many people feel so passionately about what you're doing that they're going to tell a friend. And then we'll actually compare that to how many people are less excited about it. And then overall, from an overall perspective, the other key metric that we found when we look at our most successful companies and we compare to the companies who haven't done so well is overall capital efficiency ends up being a great indicator of success, a metric that we can look at. So similar to how I stated, if you're doing something right in consumer, people are going to talk about it. You're not going to have to pay as much to acquire customers. We'll look at your overall, how much are you spending in order to generate each dollar of revenue. And the number that we like to see is 4 to 1. So for every dollar you're spending on net burn, you're generating $4 of revenue.
All right, so I can feel the hook coming. So one last thing. So you mentioned this blog post. Is there a place where people can keep in touch with you, follow you, connect with you? Are you in the social channels? Where's your blog?
I'm in the social channels, and then there's a Pritzker Group blog that I contribute to called Midwest VC Musings. So you can see some of my musings there.
Some of your musings. And I'm across all social channels at Amanda K. Brinkman. There's another Amanda Brinkman out there who's been taking all my handles, so I'm using my middle initial K. K's are supposed to be memorable anyway. And we encourage you to watch The Small Business Revolution Main Street. Season 1 came out last fall. It was about a town called Wabash, Indiana. And Season 2 will be launching on September 28th, and that was in Bristolboro, Pennsylvania, so very different Midwest versus a Northeast town. And we're going to be opening up nominations for Season 3 on September 28th when we launch Season 2. So if you have a small town that means something to you and you want to nominate them to be considered for next year's winner, they win a $500,000 investment from Deluxe and get to be the stars of this makeover show. So, and that's all at smallbusinessrevolution.org or Hulu. Good? All right.
I don't need the podium, but I do need the mic. Thank you, Amanda and Sonia. What a terrific job. Let's give them another round of applause. So I was taking notes while they were talking, and everything they said was very valuable, but there were certain things that I thought resonated with me. So, and I think is helpful to this audience. And one thing is, today is a dot. We are in the relationship building business. So today, if you're talking to a venture capitalist, if you're talking to a bank, if you're talking to a supplier diversity professional, if you're talking to a procurement executive, remember, we're in the relationship building business, and today is a dot. The second thing that I wrote down is, that I think is important, in particular for the certified WBEs here, don't give up control. Don't give up control. And there are ways to do that. And while we do it in a very private way, we work with a lot of women business owners when they're thinking of transitioning their company, and we work with them on how we can be respectful of the investor's objectives, but not give up control of the company so you can maintain your certification. Don't give away more than 20% of your company in the first round. Pick your partner. Pick your partner, because you can't get a divorce. Have a lawyer on your side. Pick the right lawyer. Lastly, and I know you all know this, it's the people who matter the most. With a name like Amelia Domenko, I know how to pick my mafia. We won't talk about my relatives right now. But it is all about the culture, because they represent your brand. So every person we work with, it's about who your company, who you are, who your company is, and how that team you have built represents your brand. Those are all important, I think very, very important lessons, and I think we can apply a lot of them today. We have a very, very full afternoon ahead of us. We have 2 great workshops, Marketing for Growth and Staying Certified as Your Business Grows. And of course, Pitch Connections is going on, where we're connecting, these were prearranged, we're connecting buyers and sellers. And it's a critical conversation in the procurement process. And of course, for those that have or don't have an appointment for Pitch Connections, there's the B2B Connections, which is providing an opportunity for you to explore future business opportunities and collaborations with some mid-sized companies. And finally, this evening, I'm going to look forward to seeing all of you as we wrap up the day with the Future Forum panel and I know it's going to be great, and our awards celebration. So remember, we're building relationships. Today is a dot. Thank you again for joining us. I hope each of you make lots of connections today, and I hope that all of you from this dot end up building a line. I think that's what Sonia said. So thank you very much. Enjoy the day, and I'll talk to all of you later today.
Why does this part always go so fast?